Հարգելի հյուրեր, տիկնայք եւ պարոնայք, մենք սկսում ենք. Dear colleagues, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Speaker of Latvia, Estonia, Norway, Finland, Armenia, Deputy Speakers of Sweden, Lithuania, Denmark, Այժմ բացման խոսքի համար ողջունեք ազգային ժողովի նախագահ Ալեն Սիմոնյանին. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Մեծարգո գործընկերներ, նորին գերազանցություն, տիկնայք եւ պարոնայք, հարգարժան հյուրեր, ինձ համար մեծագույն պատիվ է հյուրընկալել Հայաստանի բարեկամ երկրների խորհրդարաների բարձրաստիճան
friendly parliament representatives under one format. In this regard, it is of special importance, and I would like to thank the Speaker of the Parliament of Estonia, a good friend of mine, Mr. Lauri Harser, for the Nordic-Baltic format to arrange and give this initiative for this meeting. At the same time, as the coordinating country for this format, I would like to thank the Latvian Parliament Speaker, Madam Daiga Mire, for her works to organize and arrange this event. Thank you very much to all the countries. And I'm glad that we really did manage to build good, solid political dialogue and partnership. Independence, sovereignty, and democracy are those values that are bringing us closer to each other. Armenia highly appreciates, in this path of challenges, the support that we are getting from our friends, even though we are living times of expansionist ambitions. Geopolitical developments, the war in Ukraine and elsewhere, are a serious signal that democracy all over the world is facing threats. In this regard, I am sure that universal human values shall be protected with united forces in order to achieve lasting peace and stability all over the world, in order to fight the challenges and the threats. Despite all the security challenges that Armenia is facing in the recent years, we are committed to the European integration process, and we do expect that in the near future a new agenda for Armenia-EU partnership will be signed. I would like to highlight the process for visa liberalization, the dialogue, which is a clear political signal to the Armenian people. It's of high importance for us, the Armenian EU cooperation, in the framework of EPF. This will indeed help and contribute to the increasing of resilience of Armenia, as well as to the protection of the civilians in times of emergencies when it comes to logistic capacity building. I'm happy to say that the EU monitoring mission's deployment has had a positive impact to ensure security, especially under the conditions of the hostile rhetorics that we are witnessing. I have to also speak about the Eastern Partnership and its importance for Armenia-EU relations, which for us is paving the path to a more solid and deep cooperation with the EU. Despite security challenges, today Armenia is looking for ways in order to normalize relations with the neighbors and achieve sustainable peace in the region. The vision of Armenia is expressed in the initiative represented by the government called the Crossroads of Peace. This is aimed at opening all the transport infrastructure in the region based on the principles of sovereignty, equality, territorial integrity, and reciprocity. Peaceful and democratic South Caucasus is important not only for Armenia and the entire region, but also for the EU and for the broader Europe. We do think that it can and we can become part of the global gateways. On our path to peace, it's of vital importance to address the humanitarian issues, and the priority of it is the urgent and safe return of the Armenian prisoners and detainees. The peace agreement from Azerbaijan. The peace agreement is not yet concluded. Most of the discussed articles have been agreed. We have proposed to the Azerbaijani side mutually acceptable solutions that will allow not only to move forward with the agreement, but also to get and give full and comprehensive answers to the problems. Unfortunately, the Armenian side does not yet have any answer yet. In my conclusion, I would like to say that peace and democracy are the key for sustainable development and welfare. I do wish us a fruitful work, and once again, thank you very much. Now, for an opening speech, I would like to invite the Minister of Justice of the Republic of Armenia, Madame Sırpuhi Galyan. Thank you. Esteemed President of the National Assembly, Nordic Baltic countries' parliaments, esteemed representatives, excellencies, dear colleagues. Today's panel discussion topic is indeed in line with the reforms that are taking place in the Republic of Armenia, including for the justice sector. Speaking about democracy and peace, first of all, we all, in my opinion, are trying to understand what this means. For me, I need to speak now here about democracy and what the government is doing in order to strengthen democratic values. Democracy, first of all, is a principle, a fundamental principle. Besides, it's also a path, a way to go to become a legal state. Democracy is also a link between the person and the state, a person and the government. Democracy is choice. It's a choice of our society, and therefore democracy is also the choice of the state. Therefore, democracy for us, for our government, is also a working style. And therefore, I'm convinced that people who, and the countries that are visiting us, and our agenda, which is on the strengthening of the democratic principles, are aligned. I have also to mention that very often, whenever we are modeling the reforms that we are implementing, we are also basing on the best examples of the countries who are now visiting us. It's not by chance, and I have to say that we do have several joint agendas that need to be further developed. We need to have further mutual visits and cooperation between our countries, and this needs to be continuous. When it comes to the justice sector and the reforms therein, I have to mention that in the recent years, with our international partners, with the European Union, Council, and separate European countries, with their support, we have done reforms in 4 directions. That's combating corruption, human rights protection, justice and legal system reform, and probation system reform, and penitentiary reform. We do have some changes, and with the efforts of the Ministry of Justice in our country, we have been implementing successfully the Institute of Arresting Illegal Property. Also, institutional bodies are introduced for combating corruption. There is the Anti-Corruption Committee, the Investigative Committee, and also we have corruption hearings specialized in 3 courts. There is also the framework of persons who have to submit the mandatory declarations, and also for a number of individuals there is the mandatory requirement for integrity checks. We have also regulated the procedures for gifts to the officials. For judicial system reforms, we have introduced simplified processes, alternative dispute management, arbitration. Armenian Center has been introduced. The social guarantees to the judges and investigators have been provided, and the premises have been improved conditions. For the civilian cases, much of the cases that were before sent to the courts have now been redirected to the notaries. It is important to mention that the Republic of Armenia has ratified the Rome Statute and has become a full member thereof. And in this regard, we are taking steps and legal amendments in order to implement the statute and in order to develop milestones for this purpose. This will be a continuous work. This is one of the areas where the ministry has had the opportunity to also take the experience from our colleagues from Lithuania. And in the basis of this has been the assessment of the risks and also individual punishment planning ideas. We have also addressed the issue of penitentiary systems being overcrowded, and we have taken steps to improve the detention conditions, and this is also a continuous work. I have also to speak about digitalization agenda. This is also very important. I think that for strengthening democracies, we need to take steps in order for our citizens to be easier able to have access to all those services that are being provided by the state. In this regard, we are taking steps having in mind also the best examples and the best practice of the countries that are visiting us now, including the best practice of Estonia. I want also to speak about electoral processes that are very important for the implementation and realization of the principles of democracy, and the actions taken by the government in the recent times are a proof and evidence of the fact that democracy is a choice that we have taken and there is no way back, and all the changes that have been implemented recently are aimed to ensure the equality and equity of the citizens and their participation in the election processes, and these are aimed to justify all these ideas that I am mentioning, and therefore I'm very glad to be participating in such an event, and I do hope that such events and discussions will have continuous nature and there will be new opportunities in order for us to further develop the relations that we already have between our countries, to further deepen those relations. I want to thank you, and once again, thank you very much.
Madam Minister, thank you for your opening speech. Also, Mr. Alen Simonian, thank you for the opening remarks. Now we follow with the panel discussion. Today in the morning and today, Madam Minister presented how important it is for us, for people of Armenia, to choose democracy. It's a choice, and we believe in a democracy. And today in the morning, when we were having a discussion, there was an idea that democracy means resilience, and resilience mostly means security. But also there is a counter-argument that democracy does not provide hard security. This is a general question for all the speakers and deputy speakers to reflect how it works. And I would kindly ask Speaker of an Estonian parliament, Mr. Hala Ahon, to take the floor first to reflect on the question. Thank you.
I have to be more precise. The Estonian parliament are Finnish Parliament, because Jussi Halla-aho is the Speaker of the Finnish Parliament, but I am Lauri Hussar, the Speaker of the Estonian Parliament. So,
No.
to be more precise.
My bad. To the Speaker of Estonian, Riigikogui, Lauri Hussar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you stated the question like this, I would say that democracy means democracy. And resilience, a modern word, what we use in a moment, is more or less how to defend the democracy, because democracy is today under so many risks and threats, and it should be kept and defended really in a way that the democracy could live. Starting from our experience, what actually we did to preserve, to hold the democracy as we think the right way to do it, it is. We really tried to build up the society where the people are mentioned, where the interests of the communities are recognized, and for that we built it up also the digital society where the people could participate also in not only in everyday life through making the decisions through the paper, but we started to use also the digital solutions, and bringing the digital solutions to our everyday life. Actually, it changed a lot. Nowadays, more or less, we are interacting with the state through the digital channels. If we have a necessity to talk with the state, we do it through the digital channels. If we are going to participate in the elections, we are doing it through digital channels. The last elections in Estonia were all in majority of digital votes. That means that majority of the voters were already the digital vote. And it has been asked from me also several times that whether there is a fraud or not. But I would say that the polls before the elections and the result afterwards are very similar. So that means that the numbers and the figures are very similar. But it is bringing more the young generation to participate in the state decisions. It is, of course, based on a huge trust on digital society, and we built it up from 2000 and 2001 when we implemented our ID card, which is actually not only the card, but a kind of a solution where we built it up the solutions on digital society. And now we are wanting to make a next step of building the digital society to design the state services for every personal citizen of the country. That the services of the state should be personal, and also if they need some kind of aid or some kind of help, it should be also automatical and very personal. So that these are actually the steps we are following. It will take some time, but we are building up now another step of so-called digital state 2.0. That means that a lot of work has been done, but more even is to come. But I'm pretty sure that we are capable of doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Hussar, for your comments, Armenian society actually follows Estonian digital agenda, and when we have each time a discussion in a parliament, we always refer to the Estonian case, and we are very much looking forward to cooperate with the Estonian parliament and government on digitalization. So you spoke about digitalization as a way to secure democracy, and I do agree that this is a very brilliant way to do so. The next question I would like to ask Speaker of Latvia, Madam Dainga Mierina, about ways to secure democracy, security, and peace. Please, your remarks.
Jā, labdien visiem! Vispirms liels paldies!
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you very much, Mr. Simonyan, my colleague, for your invitation. It is truly a pleasure to be here and to share my experience. When talking about democracy, I would like to add something. Maybe everyone has their own understanding about democracy, but we should remember one thing. The beauty of democracy and democratic values lies in its diversity, because everyone can have their own opinion. But to reach a shared common decision, you need to be able to talk among yourselves and to come to a common solution. This is important for us as well. When Latvia regained its independence, we decided on our shared goals that we want to achieve. And these goals were very clear: accession to the European Union and accession to NATO. Our society also agreed with the goals that we had set towards the EU and NATO. And together with our society, we managed to accomplish these goals. Of course, this was not an easy path. These paths are never easy because we need to find compromises between the need to make reforms, to balance national interests, to understand what reforms are necessary to be able to enter the European Union. But we have been in the EU for more than 20 years already, and looking back, we see that we did make very far-sighted and right decisions. Back then, our politicians led our way towards NATO and the EU, even though it was not easy for these politicians, and they maybe lost some popularity because of these choices. But it is important for us to understand what kind of country do we want to live in. And today, we see the fruits of our decisions, and nobody doubts these decisions anymore. These decisions are important for your country as well, because this is a decisive decision and a historic decision, a decision towards EU integration. And later on, a few years later, you will look back at the decisions you make today, and you will have a broader perspective towards the future. It is clear that you want to go the same path that democratic countries go, that prosperous countries have chosen. But this is important not just for you, but for others as well. Being in Europe provides numerous opportunities. The EU market has 450 million people. Your entrepreneurs have the opportunity to become a part of this large shared market. You will have the opportunity to freely travel and many other opportunities. And all these benefits are worth it to put in some effort and to take this path. Democracy is unimaginable without freedom of speech. Nowadays, we see that freedom of speech is being oppressed and denied in many places in the world. But this is a regressive path. If a human is afraid to freely express their opinions, then we will lose the most precious thing that we have. And over time, we might just lose our freedom without even noticing it. Nowadays, a stream of disinformation is flowing over Europe and your countries as well. This is a large challenge for our countries as well. And this is also an obstacle for you in your chosen path. But when we have become democratic, it does not mean that our work is done. We need to continue working on our democracies, because at any point in time, a disinformation wave or any other such events can stray us off our path. So I wish us all, I wish you to have a successful path to democracy, and I wish for mutual support, because we are also ready to help you in this difficult moment, to help you reach your goals.
Madam Speaker, thank you for your remarks. Indeed, democracy needs everyday care. It needs to be cared and loved every day, and all the legal amendments we discuss in the Parliament should be aimed at securing democracy, fragile democracy we have today. I would like to ask the next question finally to Mr. Jussi Halla-ahon about democracy versus autocracy. Democracy that must be secured and that it indeed provides security, because we know the same propaganda you spoke about states so much that democracy does not provide security. Look at the countries who chose to be democratic, what happened to them. So let's speak about the choice of countries that decided they want to be a democratic state. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity to take part in this panel. Does democracy mean resilience? The politically correct answer would be that, of course, democracy means resilience and democratic societies are strong. But I'm afraid it is a bit more complicated. I believe that democratic societies are inherently more resilient and stronger than other societies, for the reason that when people feel ownership and agency in a society, they are more willing and ready to make personal sacrifices for the society and for the system. For example, we saw how fast Saddam Hussein's regime collapsed in 2003 and Assad's regime in Syria last year. And I believe the basic reason was that the people in those countries were not interested in defending with their lives a system which clearly wasn't working for their benefit, but for the system and the rulers themselves. But the weakness of a democratic society is that we live in a 4-year election cycle, which creates an incentive for political decision makers to take such decisions, to take such measures that bring positive results immediately and not in the long term, not in 10 years. And if we look at the history of Europe over the past 30 years, ever since the end of the Cold War, most Western European countries and Eastern European countries, for that matter, neglected their national defense capabilities, because most people believe that large-scale traditional wars were a thing of the past. So it made no sense to invest huge sums of money on weapons, whereas it was politically much more popular and expedient to spend more money on social welfare and social security and other more urgent matters. As my esteemed colleague from the Estonian Riikikogu, Mr. Hussar, said, Democracy and resilience are not the same thing. Democracy is a political system that empirically produces better societies than autocratic systems. But it's just a political system and it needs to be defended. And we should avoid the dangerous illusion that a democratic society is automatically strong against internal threats. That's not always the case. Democracy doesn't always win. We have been waiting for the collapse of the North Korean system since 1950s and the collapse of the system in Iran since 1980s. We have been expecting Mr. Lukashenko to collapse any day since 1990s. Autocratic systems can be extremely resilient, and this is something that we also have to keep in mind.
Thank you for your very sincere answer. Of course, we need to secure democracy, and democracy provides a better society. But also, why democracy is very important for us, it's because Armenian people were deprived of democracy for a very long time. And now to secure democracy, we believe we need to build strong institutions. And this is the way we believe we can secure democracy. I want to ask next question to Mr. Masoud Gharakhani about trust in democratic institutions, because Norway is known for the high level of trust in democratic institutions. What strategies have been most effective in fostering this trust? Thank you.
This is right? Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you for a very good question. That's true. You know, when you are seeing the different indexes in the world, Norway is on the top regarding democracy, freedom of speech, and free press. And I think that's three values that hang together if you want to succeed as a democratic country. And I think what history has shown us is that authoritarian regimes, they will fail and they will fall. But democratic countries will survive. But to be a democratic country is not only about the constitution. You know, if you see different constitutions in the world, the oldest still functioning constitution in the world is the American. The second in line is the Norwegian. And actually we were inspired by the American when we made our constitution in 1814. But it's also about a democratic culture in your society. It is about respecting civil society. It's about that, okay, we represent different political parties. We have 9 different political parties in my parliament. And we have different ideologies and strategy for economic development of our country. But there's some values that we respect no matter which political side we represent. And that's human rights, and that's rule of law. I think that's very important. And it's also respect of minority in the society, to make sure that all voices are heard in the political process. And another most important thing is the independence of the judicial system. So it was only 3 months ago that we made the biggest changes of our judicial system since the Constitution was made in 1814. All parties agreed. And it was about making sure that our judicial system is independent, because that's important to actually defend our Constitution and to defend human rights in the society. Thank you.
Next question will be in Armenian, so please put them.
Mr. Simonian, we spoke about the importance of democracy.
Okay,
yes,
better. Yeah, okay. So, Mr. Speaker, we spoke about the importance of democracy for the Armenian society. We spoke several times how Armenian society chose democracy even after the war and the results of the war. I would like to hear your reflection on Armenian choice. all the time on democracy after the revolution of 2018?
Thank you for the question. I think that Armenia should, when we are talking about democracy, we should see democracy through scope of security, because biggest challenge for Armenia today is security. And I should say that democracy brings security to the borders of Armenia. And, you know, at first, we were waiting reactions from security systems like CSTO, but we didn't hear anything which can change something on the ground. And instead of it, we saw the direct and addressed statements from democratic states. And I'm sure that in the ground it's changed a lot. And even today, I think that being democratic state for Armenia, it's the biggest security system today. I shared that thoughts with my colleagues today during our meeting. And I hope that today everybody is understanding that if you're attacking Armenia, you're attacking a democratic state. If you're attacking Armenia, you're attacking democratic values. And of course, I want to say thank you to all of our colleagues for sharing their experience. And I think that we have lots of things to do till now, and we will cooperate with our colleagues to be more democratic day by day. So I want to use this opportunity one more time to say to my colleagues who are here today that this visit, this conference, brings another one level of security to our country. And this visibility is very important for us. And thank you very much for this conversation one more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next question goes to the first Deputy Speaker of Lithuanian Seimas, Mr. Juozas Olekskas. I would like to ask you about this dilemma, whether democracy is resilience or not, whether it provides soft security or hard security. Thank you.
Thank you very much for questions. Thank you for the possibility to participate in this discussion. Indeed, the democracy is not the gun, but democracy is the instrument to create the security. And I have my own example from Lithuania side. When we declared independence, without our movement forward to the being a European member of European family, we try to find the instrument how we can agree on this path of way. And despite the different opinions between the different political groups and different political parties, at the beginning of the 90s, in 1993, we signed the first agreement between the political parties in Lithuania for our foreign and security policy. And despite the changes, being the position and opposition, we going step by step forward. And now we also facing for the maybe new agreement, because in new geopolitical situation, to sign the new agreement. But this is the tool or instrument for defend the real defense of the democracy. But now, when I arrive to the Yerevan, I think that I have a new example. You, citizens, signed the letter of proposal to the parliament, to the government, to start to process of the European integration. And as I know, the government support this proposal, and they will be the discussion in the parliament. It shows that we being the democratic, we can create the unity between the political parties, between the society, and be strong on this patch. I think this is much more powerful instrument than autocratic decision. It was some examples about how the democratic, the autocratic states, they disappeared. But this democracies, this is the best tool for, in my opinion, to create a strong and peaceful surrounding. You look for in this long-term period, European Union is the region or area where people live peacefully. It looks that democracy creates a peaceful environment, and we can use this tool for our defense, not only talking about the strong, hard defense, but also the spirit of defense. Thank you.
Yes, true. Citizens of Armenia signed the proposal. It was sent to the government, and it will be discussed actually tomorrow in the Committee of Armenian Parliament on European integration process. So, and it's very nice that you will be there there tomorrow in the morning. Just after meeting you, we will have the committee meeting. So this is on European integration, and actually this brings me to...
Good luck for discussion.
Thank you. It brings me to Mr. Kenneth Forslund. So taking into account of the transformation of an Eastern Partnership, actually, you as a founding country, what prospects for the partnership program do you see in the upcoming future?
Well, thank you for the question, and thank you for having us here. I think the Eastern Partnership is our way to contribute to bring countries neighboring to the European Union to increase their standards of living, the wealth, the prosperity of their countries by helping you develop and securing democracy and paving the path towards a future EU membership if you are interested in it. It's obvious that Armenia is interested in it, but we know it might differ from country to country, and we have to accept that. I'm very optimistic now, since Poland is the present chairman country of the European Union, and one of their goals now is to, so to say, reinitiate the process and to bring it up to date and moving forward again. I think that we perhaps, to be honest, we perhaps underestimated the challenges when we founded this a little bit more than 15 years ago. It also got its enemies outside both the EU and the countries that we were including, because there were some that didn't consider that this was good for them. I and many of my friends in the Swedish Parliament thinks that prosperous nations have prosperous neighbors, and that's important. And prosperity also brings security in the long run. And the EU itself shows that very evidently, I think. So this is our aim to, an effort to try to contribute to development, to security, to prosperity. And I think that the process is important, and I think that in the long run it will be fruitful. And one of the things that we do now in Sweden is that we're establishing a cooperation with your parliament to help you develop even further. And we had the first initial meeting last week, and we're looking forward very much to do this during a couple of years now. We have just finished a similar cooperation with Northern Macedonia, which has been very successful, and we hope that we will be able to create some of those good results together with you in your parliament now.
Yes, sure. Yes,
can we go on?
Because yes, sure.
Thank you very much for the discussion already. We actually reached into the essence of democracy and why we have to defend it. And I would say that the essence of the democracy is actually the equal rights for everybody who is participating in the process, also the equal opportunities for everybody who is participating in this. And therefore also this is up to the citizens to decide then what is a right and what is a wrong decision. And we've all agreed also here in the panel that actually democracy means also not only the rights, but that means that the societies are built up in a right and equal basis, which means also the prosperity, also for the countries. And this is for what we have to stand for, and we are standing also. And if we are thinking about in which kind of society we are living in today, it is an information society. That means that actually the power which actually running the society is information. And therefore also the equal rights in here is very important. And if we are talking about the democratic societies, then for the media there are a lot of regulations, and media is regulated to guarantee this equal treatment of every part, especially in the political field. But if we are looking today in the social media field, it is more or less a Wild West in a moment. So we know already the results of the Romanian elections where because of the interference and TikTok, actually one candidate got a huge advantage. There are several examples where through the social media is possible to interfere into the elections in a way you can't recognize, but the result is there. And therefore, the next question for all of us is also actually how to act with such kind of things when social media is interfering into the free elections, when with the foreign money is influence the possible result of the elections. And we have to really to think about it and to find the solutions where we could guarantee the equal treatment of everybody who is participating in the political process. So therefore I'm pretty sure that we must defend the political process, we must defend democracy, and we must build it up in a way that the real resilience, what you mentioned, the real resilience is there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Husa, for your comments on freedom of speech versus democracy, because sometimes it feels like you don't know how to act when you want to protect freedom of speech, but you feel you have to deal with fake news, deep fake news. And this brings me to the last question to Mr. Hung on ways to secure freedom of speech in democratic states when all over the world there is a propaganda and very right-wing discourses.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and such an honor to visit your wonderful country. Well, first of all, I would say that you cannot divide things. You cannot answer one question without taking in that answering the question of how to build a resilient democratic society. You cannot divide that from other questions. And I believe on the long run, Denmark is sharing values with its neighboring countries like Norway, Sweden, and Finland. And you cannot divide misinformation, trust in public institutions from the fact that you have values on which you build your country. So it's not a coincidence that every year, you know, this survey, maybe you know it, this survey, this poll, that will show where does the happiest people in the world live, right? And it always, every year, is a tough competition between Finland, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Because if you live in a society where you feel safe, you trust the public institutions, in general, you also trust your politicians, then you are also, at the same time, a happy people. And the funny thing about it is that it's the same things that make these countries very efficient. So one of the reasons why this trust and this resilience against misinformation is, of course, that we are so happy to live in very wealthy, welfare societies, but it's not all. It's not the whole. It's not the whole answer. So you can talk about freedom of speech, but you cannot divide that from the other things. That, for example, as a politician, sometimes I think you can imagine. I think of all the journalists, right? They're kind of a pain in the ass. But they are not, they are in pain in the ass if they get after you, but you have to take the same medicine as you want your opponents to take. So have a free speech, to have a democratic medias, and every day I read papers that are from another point of view than mine, but I actually in general believe what they're writing, because that is trust, that is what you can, how you can fight misinformation. And freedom of speech does not only has to do when politicians have the right to make speeches. It's more down to earth in Denmark anyway. It has also to do with the way that we, for example, raise our kids. Now, if you really want to, that your parents kind of think that you're doing a good job, is when they contradict you. So Danish parents in general will try to have your kids showing that you have the courage to stand up for your own opinions. It's, we try to educate, we try to make it a caring value, that we have to empower ourselves, we have to empower the grassroots, you have to empower yourself so that you can stand up to your parents, to your teacher, to your employer, to your priest, to your politician. So that is the core value of the free speech and how you make a society where you have no, or almost no corruption, and where you believe in the court system, because you are raised with a value that if you want to have good grades in a Danish school, don't write down what the teacher is saying. Make your own opinion and write that down, and then you'll have a good grade. So the teachers try to encourage the pupils to think differently than they do themselves, and the parents in general will encourage their kids to think different than they do themselves. So we can kind of say, if you put 3 Danes in a room, right? After 15 minutes, they will have formed 4 organizations. We usually are very proud of, we don't think that there are any country in the world where there are so many organizations that are in Denmark. Danes organize in all kinds of ways you wouldn't imagine. And sometimes I think if the parliament in Denmark should disappear, the population wouldn't notice within the first couple of months. Because they organize their own lives, not as individuals, but as collectives. We organize all kinds of things, and we empower the local levels also. So the way of thinking of that is, on the long run, the real weapon against misinformation is that you create a society where you're skeptic, where you try to tell you, when they're only a few years old, tell them, make your own mind, find your own path. And if you follow that, that gives you a strong, resilient society that can kind of fight misinformation and that can carry the core values of trust to the society. Not trust because you don't have a choice, but because you have figured it out and then you trust. And that would be the last thing that I have to say, that is, all this thing about freedom of speech, now you have to test yourself. The interesting thing is not freedom of speech if the guy next to you say the same things as you say. It's not freedom of speech if he just believes in the same thing as you do. Freedom of speech is really to criticize and be open to criticism. Also when it comes to tough parts. And I know Denmark in some countries are having a bit of a reputation of being hard on criticizing religion. But it is a part of it. It's a part of it. That we have a critical attitude to religion, to priests. And also, not specifically only those, but also those. Don't have anything that you cannot discuss. And when you have that kind of society, don't be afraid. You'll have trust in each other, and you'll have trust in the public institutions. But you don't compromise with freedom of speech.
Thank you, Mr. Han. I completely agree that media literacy and critical thinking is very important for a democratic society, and this is what we try to teach students from the very early age. I know that Mr. Halla-aho wants to reflect to what was said. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hong, my esteemed colleague from Denmark, made reference to the annual surveys which show that the happiest people in the world live in the Scandinavian countries. Finland is usually the #1 on that list. I would advise you to take these surveys with a grain of salt, as they say, because the results that you get very much depend on the questions that you put to the people. According to what I know, those surveys usually don't ask people whether they feel happy. Instead, they measure things like access to public health care, access to public education, the level of social security, etc., which don't necessarily tell you anything about the mood of the population in that country. While, according to surveys, we are the happiest nation on earth, we also have one of the highest rates of suicide in Europe, so everything is relative. If I may also, Madam Moderator, say something about or respond to Mr. Hussar from Estonia, I would be inclined to take a more fundamentalist approach to freedom of speech, especially in the social media. Too often, when we talk about freedom of speech, we have in mind the traditional media, their right to say anything they like, or the right of our decision makers to say anything they like, while the freedom of speech should be first and foremost a citizen's right. And the social media is the channel through which ordinary people can voice their opinions and express their views. While I agree that in theory it sounds like a good idea to, on the one hand, guarantee the freedom of speech, and on the other hand, to protect the society from fake news and hostile propaganda, in reality, the difference between legitimate political advertising and what somebody might call fake news is a very, very fine line. If we start censoring the social media, it will be human beings who write the criteria for censorship. And those human beings will have a very great temptation to dismiss everything they don't like as fake news and hostile propaganda. So I believe these ideas to regulate the social media and to limit the freedom of expression might very well do much more damage than they do any good for our societies.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Yes, please, the floor is yours.
So, thank you very much, and this is actually what you see. This is a freedom of speech. This is a real debate here, and I actually agree with a lot of what Jussi said. But if we are talking about a possible interference into the democratical processes, like we saw actually in Romania, where one candidate was got an advantages and the other ones don't, and then through I mean the TikTok channel, and if such things are happening in the information society, in the social media, then I think there is a necessity of the society to interfere. That, as I mentioned, actually the opportunities and the rights for the participants in the political field should be equal. And if there is a kind of interference from abroad with the money from abroad, then we are in a trouble. We have to look it very carefully. If it's local, supported by the local people in an equal way and equal rights, then I think it's a part of the democratic process. But if the interference is from somewhere outside, and probably from undemocratic state or institution, then we are already in a trouble. So therefore we have to be really careful with this one that say that in social media everything is free and you can do what you want. I think, as I mentioned, we are living in the information society when the turning power is information, and therefore we should actually treat all the possibilities in a way that it should be equal for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for the last response, I know you want the floor. Please, Mr. Forslang.
Thank you very much. I'm very positive of social media, but I'm at the same time very skeptical about some of the things that we see there. I actually have a disclaimer on my Facebook, my official Facebook page, and there I quote the former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, because he said, among other things, about social media that for politics it's a bit of a plague, to be honest, because it creates an exchange of abuse rather than exchange of argument. It hardens positions and it creates these echo chambers. Those are the negative sides of social media, digital media. The positive side is definitely that it can, at best, bring people, the voters, closer to the elected in the society. And that is what we really should try to make more out of social media, to make it be that, not the hardened positions, the echo chambers, and the abuses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now this brings us to the coffee break. We will follow the discussion with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Armenia, Arat Mirzoyan, shortly, and he will introduce the peace agenda. Thank you. Please. We'll be back in 30 minutes. Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are starting in 2 minutes. Հարգելի հյուրեր, սկսում ենք 2 րոպեից։
I can send you tapes with best programs.
Jeg jobba med migrasjon for det sosialdemokratiske partiet tilbake til 2018. Da besøkte jeg Danmark. Som jeg ble kjent med. Jeg har ikke møtt den siste tida. Har vel man har blitt veldig flink til å ta tak i og veldig vanskelig felt det der.
Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, before I pass the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Republic of Armenia, I would like to invite your attention to the screen to watch short video on the crossroads of peace.
Open borders, unlocked infrastructures, active economic, political, and cultural ties. These are the conditions necessary to establish long-term peace in our region. The Crossroads of Peace project is about creating new infrastructures or improving the scope and quality of the existing ones. Armenia is ready to establish 5 checkpoints on the Armenia-Azerbaijan borders for road infrastructures, including Kayan, Sot, near Karahunj, near Angeragot, and Yerask. Also to establish 2 checkpoints on the Armenia-Turkey border in Akhurik and Margara for road infrastructures. Armenia is prepared to ensure communications between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey by restoring 4 railway sections in the territory of the Republic of Armenia. Armenia is ready to restore the Nernadzor-Agarak railway section and to establish checkpoints near the borders, to restore the railway section from Yerask to the border of Nakhichevan, and to establish a checkpoint in Yerask, to restore the depleted parts of the railway from Gyumri to the border of Turkey, and to establish a checkpoint in Akhurik. Also, Armenia is prepared to restore the depleted parts of the railway from Harazdan to Kayan, and to establish a checkpoint in Kayan. This will create new links between all the countries of the region. The principles of the Crossroads of Peace are All infrastructures, including roads, railways, airways, pipelines, cables, and power lines, operate under the sovereignty and jurisdiction of the countries through which they pass. Each country, through its state institutions, in its territory ensures border, customs control, and security of all the infrastructures, including the passage through its territory of vehicles, cargo, and people. All infrastructures can be used for both international and domestic transportation. Countries use all the infrastructures on the basis of reciprocity and equality. In accordance with these principles, border and customs controls can be facilitated through mutual consent and agreement. As missing sections of railways and roads are restored and infrastructures unlocked, it will become possible to establish a seamless connection between the Persian Gulf, the Gulf of Oman, the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea, via a consolidated regional railway network and via north, south, and east-west roads. The government of the Republic of Armenia reaffirms its commitment to contribute its share to the region's peace and stability, and to make practical measures to build the crossroads of peace.
Please welcome Minister of Foreign Affairs of Republic of Armenia, Mr. Arat Mirzan. The floor is yours.
It's a little bit dangerous here. Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly of Republic of Armenia, Mr. Simonyan, honorable speakers, deputy speakers of the parliaments, dear guests, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I warmly welcome you to Armenia. I assume you've been expecting, or even more than that, you've been promised to see more sun in the sky in Armenia these days. Well, I'm not quite sure that we can fulfill that expectation. Instead, I could assure you that when it comes to political promises, when it comes to the values of democracy and human rights and freedom in the world and protection of democracy in the world, we are much more reliable. It was only a month ago or so that I participated in a meeting ministerial meeting between Armenia and Nordic Baltic countries in Malta. The meeting was organized upon my request and kindly organized by the foreign affairs ministers of your countries. And now I have the privilege to deliver some preliminary thoughts, preliminary notes during this very important discussion on this very important occasion of visit of presidents or the representatives, presidents of the parliaments of Nordic Baltic 8 countries to my country. And I would like to assure you again that we are determined to explore new opportunities, new ways to deepen the cooperation between our countries. And of course, I will say why, but I'm afraid I'm going to do it in Armenian, so if you are interested, most probably you have to take those gadgets on. If you are not interested, I'm not going to get offended. I myself am sick and tired of boring political speeches, but at least from the point of view of media, I would recommend to have the gadgets on. So I will give you a couple of seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, moving to speak in Armenian, I will just continue what I had already started, saying that the reasons for which Armenia is interested to significantly deepen cooperation with Nordic Baltic countries, and the reasons are very transparent and very clear. Maybe also there is our interest in it, and the reasons are the following. I am convinced that the Nordic Baltic countries are among those countries where Democratic institutions are the strongest. Democratic institutions are at the most institutional level and protected and established, and human rights are most protected. Societies are very solid, standing for the values of democratic freedoms, and the societies do understand the dangers and the risks faced by the global democracy today. This is one. And the second layer would be that the Nordic Baltic states, for us, are regional cooperation and partnership best examples, probably. And in this regard, we have much to learn, and we also do hope that we will be able also to give something in return. Ladies and gentlemen, I do not know how your discussions today will further evolve. Will there be theoretical debates about democracy and peace, or would there be practical, concrete expressions, case studies about the South Caucasus, about Armenia or other regions? But I would like, before your discussions, to say something very brief and share my understanding about what Armenia today is. Number one, today Armenia is a democracy. Number two, indeed, we are lacking experience, we are young, we yet have much to learn and do, many mistakes to make and learn from those mistakes, but we are a democracy. We are a society that once and for all has proven its commitment and dedication to democracy. It may be a paradox that when Armenia was trying to defend democracy, democracy came as a tool, came to protect Armenia. I bring the example of 2021, when the Armenian authorities, after the 2020 war, seeing the political crisis, seeing also the external influences, military reform attempts, etc., etc., our authorities, the authorities of the Republic of Armenia, decided to have blitz parliamentary elections, to use the fundamental tool of democracy, that is the elections. And the political force that I am represented, headed by Prime Minister Mr. Pashinyan, made two proposals to the society, that is, democracy and peace. And we can now see the results of those elections, and we can say that the Republic of Armenia, the citizens of the Republic of Armenia, in majority, without any doubt, have chosen and elected for peace and democracy. Indeed, many will agree with me on the matter that for democracy, probably it's a bit easier. For democracy, it depends on you. It depends on your own speaking with yourself in the society. But with the peace, it's a bit difficult because you have to deal with your neighbor. You can't do peace alone. You can't do peace alone. You can do your best, but you can't do it alone if you are not able to convince or find common lines to build peace with your neighbor. And this is exactly what we are going through now. I promised, as brief as possible, to describe what is Armenia today. So it is today a democracy and a strive for peace. We are trying to regulate and normalize our relations with our immediate neighbors, that is Turkey and Azerbaijan, and I will say publicly, it's publicly known that with our neighbor, with Turkey, with whom for more than 30 years have closed borders, we have now quite an active dialogue. Today we understand in general that open borders, direct cooperation can be in the best interests both of Turkey, Armenia, and also for other countries in the region. Very active, very intensive dialogue we are holding with them, but unfortunately it is not yet giving tangible results on the ground. With Azerbaijan, For several years already, we are negotiating. The negotiations do continue in different directions. One of them you saw already on the video clip that we showed you on the screen, that we are proposing to open the borders, operate railroad link, first of all, for the goods, but also to create opportunities not only for Armenia and Azerbaijan, but also from east to west for all the countries. Create opportunities. This is one, but the other direction would be delimitation of the borders. It's of core importance because we have already started the process of delimitation, something that has started based on the Alma-Ate Declaration, a document. I will briefly describe the document. It's a document about former Soviet republics, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, have agreed that they will recognize each other's territorial integrity by the borders that existed between each other at a moment of the collapse of the Soviet Union, which means that this is based on which the limitation will assume mainly maintaining the borders that existed as of before the collapse of the Soviet Union. This is a core achievement, in my opinion, in our days when chaotic processes are going on, processes that are violating international law, international rules, and indeed territorial integrity. There is the third direction as well. That is there to complete the other two directions. That is the peace agreement. The peace agreement for a long time, very hardly, we are working with Azerbaijan to achieve an agreed text for the peace agreement. At the moment, we have agreed 15 articles out of the 17 that are being discussed, so majority, most of the work has been done. We need to agree 2 more articles only. But on the other hand, this may take time. This may take time. And the solution is one. It is to have political will on both sides, both countries, and if there is the political will, I will reassure you that it will take us a very short period of time to finalize the text. From our side, the political will exists. Prime Minister Pashinyan, for several times, has stated about the readiness of Armenia to, as soon as possible, finalize the text and conclude the peace agreement. Unfortunately, I cannot say that the same constructive approach exists and the readiness exists with our neighbor, but it's a process that has no alternative. Even despite the challenges that we may be facing during negotiations, even despite the constructive approach that probably our neighbors do not share, this cannot disappoint us. Democracy, freedoms, and peace have no alternative. Please be aware that the Republic of Armenia is a partner for you that deeply believes in democracy and peace, and that has not stopped and will not stop doing its utmost in order for here in the South Caucasus to have peaceful, democratic heaven. Thank you. Indeed, I didn't keep my promise of being brief. Apologies. Have a wonderful discussion.
Dear colleagues, as promised, now we will pick up the question from the audience. And I will ask to raise the hands. Okay, I already see the hands. I'll try to give the possibility as much as possible, but we are limited in time. So actually, I saw firsthand it's Daniel Ionisan from Union of Informed Citizens, and I'll ask Ruben Mehrabian to get ready for the next question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Actually, I guess the Baltic states and in long run Finland are the best examples on how to get rid of Russian occupation, how to get independence from Russia. And I would like to ask for your advice, if I may, on how should you deal in that path, because in that path you are quite forward, and Armenia should take your example to some extent. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. That's a very good question. Actually, if we are talking about, I'm starting from this Nordic Baltic cooperation. You see on the stage actually the teachers and the pupils, very good pupils, as we entered actually the process of Euro integration. Our biggest supporters were our Nordic partners, and I really want to thank Finland, Denmark, Norway, who was a bit outside in this Euro integration process, but you were always there if we needed. So, and with your advice, Norway did actually so much and so much for Estonia, for especially not only in Euro integration process, but also in our process to entering in the NATO, and of course Sweden. And I think they deserve a big applaud for that. And that is actually also a kind of an example which actually also inspired us to get rid from the Russian influence and to forget the Soviet era, because with the friends, with their advices, with their how to say, very good inspiration. We actually got the very clear path where to go, and that actually helped us really to anchor ourselves and our thoughts to Europe. Another thing was that we really wanted it. Our former president Lennart Meri said, "We are coming from the Russian time and we are entering into the Estonian time." And that is actually totally true what he said, because in the Soviet time we were in the Moscow time, and then we changed it 1 hour later to the Estonian and Finnish time also. And actually this was very practical thing that we just get rid from the time we were there. We really try to be the best pupils in the European Union. We adapted all the legislation. We took it over. Sometimes we were even more orthodox than the Pope itself in taking over the EU legislation, and it has been criticized in Estonia. But today I would say that it was actually the right decision, because that it helped us make the reforms. It helped really us to modernize the society and to forget the past. And of course the will of the country to be in Europe, to be with the friends, to be with the allies. That is the thing actually what helped us to get rid from the Soviet past. And last not least, we are in front of the last step in getting rid from the Soviet past. And this will going to happen in 8th of February, when we will going to desynchronize our electricity system from the Russian electricity system, and we will synchronize it with the European one. And although we are facing difficulties in here, as the Russia's shadow fleet is trying to destroy the connections between Finland and Estonia in Finnish Gulf, and one electricity cable has been already destroyed. But it will not stop us. We will going to do it in 8th of February, and that means that with this step, the last tie with our Soviet history is cut off, and we are really in a new era. And for example, just to bring one example also, in the last year, what we did in Estonia. I know Latvia did it already much earlier, but we started the project of the Common Estonian School, which means that actually we are closing now the Russian-speaking school system, and there will be only the Common Estonian School, in which mainly is taught in Estonian language. So this is also a kind of a step which will gonna be finalized in 2030, but the reform has started already. But Latvia did it earlier.
Jā, es varbūt paturpināšu savu kolēģi un gribu teikt tā, ka Krievijas
I would like to supplement what my colleague already said. Thanks to Russia's invasion in Ukraine, we managed to take swift decisions that we had been delaying for decades. One example is the desynchronization from the Russian electricity system. This is indeed a historic step, and we will be synchronized with the European, continental European electricity grid. And the cost of this project is 200 million euros, which is quite a large sum. But because of Russia's invasion in Ukraine, we finally took the decisions that previously faced a lot of debates in our society. For example, we removed all the Soviet monuments in our country. In our capital city, Riga, we had a huge Soviet-era monument, and we finally removed this monument. We had to adopt a special law, and all the MPs who adopted this law are in the blacklist of Russia as criminals. And so you must be aware of how Russia will react if you take decisions that Russia doesn't like. And this was a very decisive step. And our local governments also worked on removing all the Soviet-era monuments. These monuments were also a cruel reminder of all this past of Russification and other ways of oppression. Yes, as Mr. Husar mentioned, we moved to Latvian language instruction in schools, but now, in addition to that, we, instead of the Russian language as secondary language, are teaching other languages in schools, focusing on European Union languages as second languages instead of Russian. And in addition, we fully cut off our gas supply from Russia in the course of just a few months. And we see that there is no way back. When it comes to our entrepreneurs, they are facing a more difficult situation because already several decades ago, our companies saw that Russia is not a reliable partner. If Russia did not like our decisions, then companies were the ones who would pay the price. For example, our canned fish suddenly was no longer a desirable product for Russia for some reason or another. But the war in Ukraine was the final nail in the coffin, the final crisis that made our companies understand that cooperating with Russia is no longer profitable and no longer reliable. So Russia can no longer give us any benefits in the long run. And of course, the decisions we make will have lasting consequences. And the decisions in Armenia will for sure face a reaction from Russia, and you will have to overcome these obstacles. So you have to work with your entrepreneurs, and you have to think about energy independence and other issues that await you. Thank you.
I know that the question was pointed at the Baltic countries, but just to give a brief introduction to how it was, how we looked at it from Denmark, and that could be inspiring for a small country like Armenia. When the countries stepped on the road, on the path for independence, the bigger countries were confused. They didn't know what to do. And as Nordic countries, quite often the bigger countries kind of was expected to get in front, and it would be too dangerous for smaller countries to recognize the independent Baltic countries. But that could be inspiring for smaller countries. But what happened was that the smaller Nordic countries were the first to recognize the independence of the Baltic countries. And afterwards, the bigger European countries looked at us and said, okay, if those small countries were so bold, they dare to recognize countries in a situation where everything was very uncertain and could possibly develop in a dangerous direction. Smaller countries had the courage to recognize the independence of the countries, and after that, you saw the picture that bigger countries followed up. So it could be an inspiration for all of us that represent smaller countries, that if we do something, that we can actually go ahead if we have the courage to do it, and we can support one another.
Mr. Halla, you wanted to reply to the question. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you for the very good question. We have a very clear political will to help Armenia to exit the Russian sphere of influence, and we are glad to see that there is a will in the Armenian society to do that. My advice is that you should not focus on Russia and the past. You should focus on Armenia and the future. Russia is not your friend. It's an imperialistic predator that takes advantage of the internal weaknesses of its neighbors, especially former Soviet republics. I think Ukraine, from the beginning of their independence in 1991 until the annexation of Crimea and the revolution in 2014, was a prime example of this method. Russia does everything it can to sow and maintain internal political and economic chaos in those countries in order to keep them under their control. How this works? When the political leadership in a country like Ukraine did not implement necessary internal reforms, the living conditions of the people did not improve, there was corruption everywhere. People always get disappointed in their leaders, and they elect a new populist leader who promises to do miracles and in the end does nothing. This weakness makes these countries, including your country, a very attractive target for Russia. So the best way to leave this Russian sphere of influence, to get rid of the Russian dominance, is to increase the internal resilience of the society. There are many ways, or there are many things that you need to do to make your society internally stronger. One of them is building trust between your citizens, building trust of the population in their leaders, and the system must trust their citizens. People are much more willing to make a contribution to the society and work for the society if they believe that everybody else is doing their part and the society works for the benefit of its citizens and not for the benefit of the few and the rich. I think this is my answer to your question. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. I'm very sorry, as we are limited in time and there are plenty of people who want to ask.
I just want to say that we are already disconnected from Russian greed for many years, so I never knew that we could be proud of that. Thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you. I'll ask Ruben Mehrabian to ask the question, and then I saw Gane Abramian's hands first, President for Equal Rights. So I'll ask her to ask after Ruben Mehrabian. Thank you.
Շնորհակալություն։
I am Ruben Mehrabian. I am the Deputy President of For Armenia Party. Our Minister of Foreign Affairs spoke about peace, about democracy. We see that in our surroundings, so we witness very little peace, and that's why democracy is under danger. And at least the examples of Finland and Sweden show that one during its 200 years of neutrality, the other one its 80 years of neutrality put aside, and they entered into NATO, joined NATO. So this means that there is danger, and this is a hybrid danger. Your countries have very good experience, dynamic experience to resist the Russian dynamic war on the institutional level, and we need now this because nowadays Russia leads hybrid war against Armenia in spite of a lot of papers that our former authorities signed with Russians, believing that this will work. I would like to ask you to share your country's experience in this regard, speaking about the dangerous neighborhood that your countries are in, and we together with you, but simply a little from the south. Welcome to Armenia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To give a short historic perspective on the Swedish non-alignment, it started with a Russian invasion and it ended with a Russian invasion, and in between there was 25 years. It started with the Russian invasion of the Swedish island Gotland in 1809. To get rid of them, we had to give up Finland, the second half of Sweden back then, for several hundred years. Then we were non-aligned for many hundred years, more than 200 years. The reasons for it tended to vary over time, but you also have to understand that during the period from the Second World War and onwards to the 1990s, we did that by also having one of the strongest armed forces actually in the world. For instance, the Swedish air fighting capacity was the 4th in the world. It was the US, it was the Soviet Union, it was the United Kingdom, and it was Sweden during the 50s and 60s. We paid a high price. Now, in this, after the invasion of Ukraine, the full-scale invasion, we shifted our position. We decided to join NATO because we feel the need to do this in a cooperation to keep Sweden safe. And it's also because of the reason not only to have the possibility to cooperate, it's also because that the invasion of Ukraine finally totally shifted the fundamentals for the Swedish non-alignment, because that was based on some kind of respect and predictability, and we didn't feel that, and Finland certainly didn't feel that any longer when Russia started to invade all of Ukraine, or at least tried to. So I think that it's important that you build security, but to build security it's much easier also if you have a strong democracy, so that your population actually are engaged and feel that there is something that they really cherish and want to defend and build the hard security and take part in that with a genuine engagement. So I think that democracy, freedom of speech, working institutions and all of that is also vital fundamentals to actually build security and to have the population feeling that there is something that we really cherish and want to defend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forslund. you want? Yeah, sure. Please, Mr. Olegas, the floor is yours.
I would like to add a little bit only because I think there's participation in different international organizations like European Union and NATO. It's not a donation. It's decision of each country and nation. As you said, the society should be prepared, should be ready for different implementation of different reforms and requirements. And we, Baltic states, I think, will be very happy that we achieved our goal to be members of European Union and NATO in the same time, early, and we can continue our reforms and development of the countries. But new members thinking about the membership should be ready to implement and should be create a consensus in society. It's not that we are some parliament or government that we would like to join the organization and didn't have the support from nation. I think it's very important. NGOs, other organizations discussed about very openly and to reach the consensus in the country and then join or apply for membership, implementing the different reforms and procedures. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gana Abraman, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, honorable speakers, honorable deputy speakers, this is a great opportunity for me to say my gratitude, profound gratitude to you for your support, constant support, for standing for Armenia during this very dangerous and existential danger period for Armenia. And I want to talk about, connect the democracy danger, because we have democracy, but it's fragile democracy, and the main danger towards our democracy is our neighbor, and also weaponized by Russia as well. We are now having a huge problem, and you know that we have peace process, but every day the dictator Aliyev is threatening Armenia, especially threatening Armenia using just the same narratives as Putin is doing, threatening Armenia with denazification, with militarization, which is the same narrative as Putin is doing with Ukraine. Just during these days, there is a totally illegal process, judicial process towards our prisoners of war. And although we are really thankful to EU for support, and especially to Nordic and Baltic countries for your support, but I want to raise my concern over the lionant approach by EU, which really creates a very dangerous precedent. Aliyev is threatening democracy very openly. Recently, during his very recent interview, he's saying that yes, it's normal, it's become a new normal to use a force. So is it possible, my question is to you, is it possible to put more harsh pressure on Aliyev? Otherwise, he will never pursue peace, and he will become a constant threat towards Armenia, towards Armenia's democracy, and he will become also a constant tool for Russia or Russian-driven destabilization in the region general. So is it possible to be more proactive in this regard? Thank you very much.
Is there a wish to reply to the Mr. Hong? Yes, and I'll give the floor first to Mr. Hong and then to Mr. Hussar, please.
If I lived in Armenia, the first thought in my head every morning and the last thought in my head in the evening would be, how do I connect to like-minded countries? The way to survive is to have alliances when you are a small country. It's very obvious for you when you have countries close to you that wants to bully you, but also in a more international perspective. What we're looking into is that, for Armenia anyway, there will be, beside the neighbors, there will be regional powers like Turkey, Iran, India to some extent, but on a world base, we will see United States, Russia, and China. And when the big elephants starts to dance, the small countries will be crushed. And the only way that we can have an insurance for peace and insurance for our survival as independent countries will be to connect to like-minded countries, to make strong alliances that can kind of match what we're looking into. What we're looking into is, like we've seen all of us within the last couple of weeks, that apparently international rules and regulations and agreements is thrown up in the air. And who will that benefit? That will only benefit the countries that are so big and so strong that they can do whatever they want. But all smaller countries, especially smaller, but even medium-sized countries in Europe like Germany, France, Italy, but especially smaller countries, you have to make strong alliances with like-minded countries, otherwise the big elephants will crush us. So that's also, but I see it as Armenian. You have both, you have the neighboring countries that are threatening you, but you also have regional powers that just on a long term will be able to threaten you. So keep on getting closer to Europe, keep on connecting to the alliances that are already there as EU and the NATO.
Thank you. Mr. Hussar, please.
Yes, I totally agree with my Danish colleague, and I would say that actually you did with your step already probably the biggest pressure to the process, and the peace process initiated by Armenia. I think this is actually the strongest word in this discussion, as you are looking for the like-minded countries, you are looking for the supporters. This word is brought now by far over the world, and try to find even more supporters for this solution. And I think then the solution will be there, which will be satisfying also for Armenia. So, but you did already the very first and very strong step with your peace agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Hussar. We do feel the support from your countries, and I know that Mr. Halla-aho wants to reflect to the question, and then Alain Simonian. Please, Mr. Halla-aho.
I think the best way to deter any aggression from any side against Armenia is to make Armenia a stronger country. For example, by integrating the country more closely with the European structures in terms of security, trade, economy, and so on. So this is something that we have to keep working on. When it comes to putting pressure on the other side of the conflict, Azerbaijan, I think it's just a fact of human life that the more we appear to take sides in this conflict, while there is no war, the less impact our opinions will have on the other side. This is just how people, even politicians and decision makers, behave. If you want to have an impact on somebody, if you want to influence their decision making, you have to show some respect towards them, regardless of whether they deserve it or not. So I think we have to keep trying to negotiate a permanent solution to normalize the relations between Armenia and its neighbors, because I'm sure in the end there are people in Turkey and Azerbaijan who understand that that would be also in their long-term interests. Thank you.
Yes,
I would like to say that I am very thankful to you for your question, and I clapped very loudly after your question, because quite often the civil society and the people who are not molded and restricted by their position, by their role of presenting a country, a state, they are far more free, and they can even speak in a more free way than politicians. That's why I'm very thankful to you. And I would like to say that though the greatest pressure when starting pressing, we should first of all press ourselves. We should be stronger. We should be much more presented in more places. We should be much more integrated into the systems, into the states, into the countries, into the politicians, from which we expect this pressure. All in all, it goes without saying that this discussion is not intended against any country. It is about peace. It is for peace. But using your wording, I should say that this is in its turn, this is another pressure suggestion that is presented by Armenia, that is to share values of democratic countries that will bring only benefit to those countries who would share those values. So once more, thank you for your question.
Thank you, Mr. Simonian. As we are limited in time, I will pick two questions. I will ask two questions, and then we will reply to them. Artur Sakuns, I saw your hand, and Stepan Grigorian. Please ask, and then we will see how we manage with the time.
Thank you. I would introduce myself, Artur Sakuns. I present the Helsinki Civilian Office in Vanadzor, and I also present the European Security Civilian Forum that includes legal offices from different countries of the world. Once upon a time, when President of the Czech Republic, the president was Václav, he said such a statement: he would never push the hand of Vladimir Putin, shake hands with Vladimir Putin, because this was his approach to a previous former colonel of KGB, and he even refused, he threatened to return a prize if this prize was given to him. In 2006, it attacked Georgia. Europe continued to buy gas. Then Crimea was annexed, and Europe continued to buy gas. The same aggression Azerbaijan now has against Armenia. All the fundamental principles, Helsinki fundamental principles, are violated, and de facto the OSCE Minsk group became non-operative as a result. I'm not a diplomat. My question is the following: how long shall we tolerate the unpunished behavior of small and medium dictators And why don't we apply the same behavior against Aliyev as was applied against Putin after his aggression? Up to now, should we tolerate when Aliyev states that he has hate policy against Armenians on ethnic principles and basis? The same fascist policy that says that Armenia should be then denationalized, like Putin does in Ukraine. And we have another such state that is a member of NATO. This is Turkey, who violates all human rights. There is a decree by the European Court that there was a violation, then the court makes a decision that he should be set free. We should about resilience. We speak about democracy, but the regimes who violate human rights, we allow them to act side by side with us in NATO, in European Council.
My question is the following. In Armenia, we have the EU monitoring mission, EU mission to Armenia. We can see the results. The borders are quite stable, and all the member states of the EU are there, including plus Norway and Canada. These people, unarmed people, were able to stabilize our borders. It's very good. We welcome it. We are grateful. We are grateful that our government applied to the EU for this. Now my proposal. There is the process for delimitation and demarcation. We welcome the process, but it's a very painful process. There are pressures, you know from where, on whom. Azerbaijan is also supported by Russia, etc., etc. Now, it's not excluded that the Nordic Baltic states could organize a monitoring mission to be deployed to the process of delimitation demarcation. Not mediators, but monitors. This is something accepted, a practice that can also resist the any of the parties to make sure to speed up the process. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yes, please, Mr. Olekas.
Thank you for your question. Indeed, the situation in the region and on new borders is not easy one. But my answer is that we join the NATO and EU by 10 years period, starting from the 1994 and became a member in 2004. It's up to Armenian decision where you going, where you would like to be. Not asking that you, different organizations, should defend our borders or discuss. Yes, we try to support you. We do our best. We come to this mission and others to trying to support you being closer to us, being in the European family. But the decision is on your side. When you will be a member of European Union, when you be a member of NATO, I think it will be the safety environment in this region than being outside of that. For a long time, in 1990s, when we decide Baltic countries to leave all relation with former Soviet Union and try to our patch to the European Union and NATO, Armenia and other South Caucasus countries still balanced, where we have the profit with relation with Russia or maybe with Europe, And this creates the situation where you are now. But I hope that we, acting together, can achieve the more peaceful environment in this region and more safety, borders, and better collaboration with neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there is no one wishing to reply, I can give you the floor. We are limited in time. I won't take questions. I'm sure those are the brilliant questions that will be addressed to the panel speakers. But if there is something you want to say to sum up the discussion we had today, please. If no, we will follow up with the program and there will be a press release with the journalists. Thank you. Thank you, dear guests. Thank you for your questions. And now we follow with the program. Thank you.
Thank you for you moderating.